For most of my life, I felt broken. It showed up in my relationships, my work, and the way I spoke to myself. No matter how much I achieved, I still felt unworthy, unseen, and alone. But everything changed when I started healing my inner child. I found peace where there used to be chaos, built friendships that actually felt safe, and created a life that feels like me again. I'm Nicole, a foster mom and inner child healing coach, and this is Heal Out Loud. Each week, we'll blend science, soul, and real talk to help you stop feeling broken and start becoming the person you've always needed. Because healing isn't quiet, it's time to heal out loud. Hello, welcome back. This is episode 11 on Heal Out Loud, and today is my mom's birthday. She would have turned 51 if she was still here with us. And today's episode is an ode to my mother, living a life aligned with what she wanted for me and carrying forward all that she taught me in life. Some people might think I'm crazy for saying this, but I am living the life I am now. I am free because of all that I went through. And I went through all of that because my purpose in life is to help others heal from their own childhood trauma, from their own childhood wounds, and from their own childhood negative experiences. This might seem also ironic to some people, but this is a love letter to my mother because I loved her so much and I still love her so much. And what I am going to share with you today is going to make some of you pass judgment on my mom, and I totally get it. But she loved me with all her heart. She loved my sisters with all her heart. She loved our family with all her heart. She was a beautiful mom in many ways, even in her fails. And the choices that she made that eventually led to her death, while they were so breaking, I wouldn't be sharing this with you. And I know I didn't go through all of this for nothing. I know I went through all of this to help other people in a very messed up way. I'm going to be sharing everything that I remember. This is the episode where I share every detail of how it felt growing up with my mom. And I want you to try and hold your judgments because on the other side of this, my life is now beautiful. My life is impactful and revolves around helping others heal from their own traumas too. So, let's go. As I said earlier, my mom turns 51 today, would have turned 51 today. And this episode is part of Solo Life Lessons. So imagine 5-year-old Nikki and imagine 25-year-old Claire. My mom's name was Claire. And we're driving in the car, and as a 5-year-old, I used to hear my mom singing and crying her heart out to Left Outside Alone by Anastasia. So yep, you can only imagine the many solo life lessons I'm going to be sharing here. My mom had a mom and a dad that were married, and she had 4 elder siblings from this marriage. And there was quite a big age gap between my mom and her siblings. Apart from the big age gap that there was between my mom and her siblings, the other 2 siblings that came before her were born in England, whereas my mom was born in Malta. Apart from that, all my mom's siblings had really curly hair. And my mom was the only one who had straight jet black hair. So why am I sharing all of this? Because the big age gap, being born in Malta, whereas 2 of her other siblings were born in England, and the difference in maybe that she looked different from her siblings, it started sending these small tiny things, which aren't even trauma, right? My mom started making that mean that she's different, that she's the odd one out in the family, that there's something wrong with her, that she's not normal. And she started building these beliefs. And I'm saying so because, of course, I know because she's my mother and she told me all of this, and she also wrote this in her book. So these 3 instances, I'm not talking about any trauma here, just messages that she started adding into her subconscious brain about why she felt so different. As kids, we make up a lot of stories, and these were some of the stories my mom as a kid made up. Since she felt so different, she was very quiet, she felt weird, she felt like she didn't fit in. So then when she went to primary school, she was the quiet girl. So unfortunately, she got really bullied. And this bullying in her primary school made her feel even more that it's true, there's something wrong with me. You see, at home I feel different, and even at school I'm feeling different. So definitely I am the problem. There's something wrong with me. I am weird. I am messed up. I do not fit in. There is no place for me here. I am unlovable. And the thing that hurt my mom the most in her primary days was not the fact that kids used to bully her. That did hurt her a lot. But it was that teachers did nothing about it, and they could see it clearly happening in the classroom during a class in front of the teachers. So what happened then was she became the bully in secondary. She became a rebel in secondary school. But she didn't bully other kids. She bullied all the teachers. She made the teachers' lives a living hell. Then in secondary school, three secondary schools kicked her out. They did not want her because, of course, she was a full-on rebel and she was bullying teachers. And then her dad had given up on her, and instead of pushing her to continue school, he took her with him to work with him. So all of these experiences in her early childhood, and of course there were many other experiences, which my mom goes in depth about these in her book, which hopefully we will be able to publish soon. However, I will not go into all of that here, but even these small things which weren't traumatic, which one would not say, oh my gosh, she went through that. She had straight hair instead of curly hair like her siblings. Something so basic, so simple. As kids, we internalize everything. As kids, we make everything mean something about ourselves. Maybe good, maybe bad. And in the case of my mom, she made all of this mean something bad about her. And then, of course, there's a dynamic that happens in the family and further wounds are passed on. So in this episode, I'm going to be talking more about how my mom's limiting beliefs led to her drug addiction, which eventually led to her death, her relationships with men, and how she always hoped that Prince Charming comes and saves her from her misery, and how I felt growing up with my mom being a drug addict. My mom started drinking, smoking, and trying soft drugs, which then led to the hard drugs from a very young age, from a really, really young age. And when she turned 20, she found out that she was pregnant with her firstborn child, me. And as soon as she found out that she was pregnant, she dropped the booze straight away. She stopped smoking. She stopped taking drugs. She changed her life like a full 360. In that moment, my mom felt like, finally, I am going to have someone who's just mine and who's going to love me with all his or her heart. But unfortunately, after a year went by, so I was 1 year old, this unconditional love that she was receiving from me, this dream that now that she's going to have someone that's going to love her with all their heart, that she will finally heal, was not enough. Her limiting beliefs were still there. Her subconscious rewiring was still there. Her childhood trauma was still there. A year later, and when I was 1 year old, my mom started taking drugs once again. She started taking drugs once again to numb the pain that she was feeling, to numb the pain that she was feeling from her limiting beliefs, from the wiring that she had, that she believed that she was not good enough, that there's something wrong with her, that she's different, that she's weird, that she doesn't fit in. My mom was the definition of beautiful inside out. She was tall, she had beautiful hair, she had these like a little bit of china eyes, she had a beautiful smile. She was super pretty, and I'm not saying this because she's my mom. I'm saying this because genuinely everyone who knows my mom says that she was a really beautiful person inside out. But no matter how beautiful she seemed to society, how beautiful she was in her kids' eyes, her brain told her otherwise. Her brain made her believe that that was not true. I remember as a kid, I literally saw my mom as a goddess. I mean, I think all kids do. I'm not sure, but yes, my mom was super special to me. She was really young, so it felt nice to me that I had a young mother who was stylish, pretty, always wearing perfume, always showing up in a really nice way. She was witty, she was funny, she would make a whole room of people laugh. She had this beautiful big smile, she kept her appearance on point. She was smart, she was educated, she was super loving, super emotionally intelligent, she was kind. stylish, life of the party. But still, all I remember from this beauty is that as soon as my mom used to go in front of the mirror, she'd smash that beauty all away by the words that she used to tell herself. Like literally, she tore herself down in front of the mirror every single time. So another solo life lesson here is that no matter your exterior beauty, no matter how beautiful you are, no matter how beautiful society sees you, if you do not believe that, if your internal beliefs are against you, external beauty means nothing. Because when you go in front of the mirror, your subconscious brain is going to start throwing at you things like you're not good enough, there's something wrong with you, you're ugly, you're this, you're that. And yep, no matter how beautiful you are from the outside, if your subconscious brain is wired against you, you will not manage to see the beauty that we see, that the outside world sees. Because of such beliefs about herself, my mom thought that she could only be saved from outside. In her 20s, she didn't realize that only she can save herself. So she always hoped and prayed for Prince Charming to come and save her. And in her book, she writes about many of the experiences she had with the men she had in her life. And she writes and she talks about them and she writes about them in this book in her funny self and her witty sense of humor. I will not go in depth about all of this, but just to have a clear idea that my mom was a woman that was waiting for Prince Charming to come and save her. I can relate to that. In my 20s, I felt the same. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you can also relate that Prince Charming comes to save you or that a woman comes to save you. Her limiting beliefs, of course, like the limiting beliefs she had about herself led to unhealthy relationships where, as I said, she talks about all the unhealthy relationships she's had in her book. But given that she had these wounds, that she thought that she was not enough, that she believed that there's something wrong with her, she continued attracting men in her life that were going to continue reaffirming that belief to her. She continued attracting men in her life who were using her for money, who were using her for drugs. So when she figured this out, then those limiting beliefs about herself were made even more true. She would believe them even more. Whereas on the other hand, she had some healthy men in her life too. But given that they were not reaffirming those beliefs back to her, that they were not making her feel that she's not worthy, they were not making her feel that there's something wrong with her, these healthy men made her feel that she's lovable, that she's amazing, that she's worthy, that she's beautiful. But those beliefs were not landing with her subconscious brain. Those beliefs were foreign to her. So when a healthy man came into her life and made her feel all that she really wanted to feel in reality, given that she was not used to this, given that what these healthy men were giving her did not fit into her confirmation bias. What is confirmation bias? Confirmation bias is you have beliefs about yourself. Let's say you have a belief about yourself that you don't look attractive enough. You walk into a room, 5 people tell you that you look beautiful and you ignore them, and one person tells you that they don't like what you're wearing, and you will end up fixating on what that person tells you. Why? Because that fits into your confirmation bias. So back to my mom, all the things that these healthy men were giving her in her life, all the love and the kindness and the care and everything that she had hoped for, when she was receiving it from these healthy men, it felt so foreign to her that she didn't like it, she didn't enjoy it, she didn't like the peace, the calm, because her brain was addicted to chaos, because her brain was addicted to making those limiting beliefs seem true. And we're all very similar to my mom. It's just my mom ended up taking drugs to numb the pain, and maybe we ended up doing other things to numb the pain. I want to say that drugs here are not the problem. Yes, of course, then they become the problem, but drugs are not the problem. There are other problems, and people use drugs to numb those problems. At surface level, yes, it was. If you asked me as a 10-year-old, what's your mom's problem? I would tell you that she's a drug addict. That was my mom's problem in my eyes back then. But nowadays, I realize that my mom had way bigger problems. My mom had a dysregulated nervous system. She had childhood trauma. She had a hurt inner child. She had her subconscious brain wired to act against her. And that was my mom's real problem. And that's how she ended up taking drugs, to numb the pain of that hurt in her child, to numb the pain of her childhood trauma, to numb the pain of the dysregulated nervous system. And funnily enough, for people who are dependent on drugs, my mom would use drugs to numb the pain. And then when the effect of the drug wears off, she would feel even worse than what she felt before she started. Because then she felt shame. She felt a lot of shame. My mom and shame walked hand in hand. She felt a lot of shame. She felt huge sadness that she relapsed again, because she knew at the time she only had me. But then, of course, after 10 years of having just me, she had my siblings, and she shamed herself so much that she spiraled even more and she took even more drugs. So it was like a never-ending toxic cycle. There's the pain. Because of this pain, she takes drugs to numb the pain. When the effect wears off, she feels shame, she blames herself, she's very guilty, she's calling herself names. Those limiting beliefs that she has are even more aggravated now by the shame she's carrying, and she goes back to drugs to numb the pain. And more shame, a never-ending toxic cycle with drugs. Apart from this toxic cycle that she had with drugs, my mom and I also had a very painful dynamic between us. As I said earlier, my mom stopped taking drugs as soon as she found out that she was pregnant with me. I was highly attached to my mom. She was my only parent, first of all, and she loved me deeply. And even though when I was 1, she started taking drugs again, so I was going back and forth slowly from her to my grandma, my family weren't fully aware that my mom had a drug problem back then. The moment that confirmed my mom's drug problem to my family once again was when I was 4 years old, and my mom and I went to visit my grandma, and my grandma told my mom, "Claire, stop using my anti-wrinkle creams. They're so expensive. You're only 24 years old. You don't have wrinkles. Stop using my anti-wrinkle creams." And in that moment, I turn to my grandma and I tell her, "My mom is crazy about wrinkles. She's so vain. She really doesn't want to have one wrinkle, because here she uses your creams, and at home she smokes from this plastic bottle." And my grandma asked me what I was talking about. My grandma was so innocent. And yes, guys, as I said earlier in this podcast, try and hold your judgment. And if you want to judge, that's fine too. I'm just here talking about all of this to teach, to heal out loud, to help others. But basically, yes, my mom used to smoke crack in front of me. I didn't know it was crack when I was a kid. She used to tell me that she's smoking from this bottle to help her get rid of her wrinkles. So when I was 4, I told my grandma just that. I told her, "Mom is crazy about her face. She really doesn't want to have wrinkles in her life, because at home she's constantly smoking from this bottle that prevents her getting wrinkles." And in that moment, my grandma could tell something was fishy. I was explaining that there's foil. I was explaining that there's a tablespoon used to burn something. And as a 4-year-old, obviously I wouldn't know these things unless someone was doing them in front of me. And of course, they had an idea that my mom was a bit of a rebel growing up, and in her teenage years especially. So that was the moment that our life turned upside down. I felt so guilty that my family found out that my mom was taking drugs because of me. I felt my mom and I were like this. My mom and I were like 2 besties, literally. I know she was my mom, but I always had her back and she always had mine. So my mom got really angry at me when she figured out that now my grandma and all the family knew that she has an addiction. When that happened, my grandma, who was also emotionally dysregulated, didn't know how to handle all that information. And of course, I don't blame her. I don't know what I would do. I know now what I would do, but you never know how you will react. You never know how painful this might feel, what we make it mean about ourselves, because I'm pretty sure my grandma made it mean that she failed as a mother, even though it wasn't her fault. But I'm pretty sure my grandma made it mean that. My grandma was also very worried because my mom had a daughter. And when that happened, all hell broke loose. They were pushing my mom to go to rehab. My mom didn't want to. There were threats like, you must go to rehab, otherwise you're going to lose everything that we've ever given you. You're gonna lose your daughter. So as a 4-year-old, this was a very painful period in my life. I felt lots of fear. I felt fear that I'm going to lose my mom, because all I ever learned, maybe in school, I'm not sure if it was in school, but what I knew as a kid about drugs was that they can kill you, that they will kill you. So at the age of 4, close to turning 5, I learned that my mom was going to die soon. I felt like I snitched on my mom without even knowing that I snitched. So I felt that I was no longer loyal to her. I felt that she was not going to love me anymore. My nana was my other parent, and I love her so much, still do. And to see your other parent in such distress, crying, not knowing what to do. Yes, as a 4-year-old, this was really tough. And then my mom she went to rehab, and that was a really painful period of my life, where in the beginning you can't see your mom as often. There's some time where you can't see them until the sickness wears off from the drugs, until the withdrawals are a bit less strong. So yeah, from the age of 4, I had this huge fear and huge knowing that the one person that I loved with all my heart and loved me back with all her heart, because she was such a good mom, that I am going to lose her soon. Then my mom came out of rehab, and as a kid you think, oh my god, she's healed, oh my god, we're gonna live the best life ever, until 2 hours later she was back on fucking drugs. I need a pause. Yeah, so she got out of rehab, and as a kid I felt so stressed. I was constantly fearing arguments between my mom and my grandma. I was always fearing that my mom is gonna go back to drugs, that she's gonna kill herself. So, yeah, anyways, that time when she came out of rehab, the first thing that she did, I was so excited to be spending the day with my mom. But instead, my mom decided to go out. She hadn't partied in a long time, and she wanted to party. She was 26 years old, very understandable. She was single, she didn't have a husband, and she still had all those limiting beliefs. She healed maybe the drug problem while she was in rehab, but in that very early rehab, she did not heal her limiting beliefs. She did not heal her hurt in her child. She did not heal her subconscious programming. She became aware what was happening, but she didn't heal. And that night I remember she went out, and took her so long to return from home. And as a kid, I felt so sad. I felt like I made it mean something about me. Here we go. Generational trauma is gonna kick off. I made that mean something about me. I made it mean that I wasn't lovable, I wasn't worthy, that there's something wrong with me. How come? Like, I've been waiting for this moment for more than 5-6 months, and instead of my mom choosing to be with me, she chose to go and party instead. So yes, that hurt. And as kids, we don't understand that, oh, it's because my mom is wounded, oh, because it's my mom is still in her rebel era, oh, it's because my mom doesn't know how to love herself, so she's gonna go out to party to once again numb the pain, and to maybe find a man so that he can love her, because she doesn't know how to give love to herself and she needs love from outside of her. No, as a kid, I made that mean that there's something wrong with me, I don't fit in, I am different to other kids. Why doesn't mom want to spend time with me? Definitely it's because I'm annoying, it's because I'm maybe not beautiful enough. Yeah, my mom always told me that when she knew she was pregnant, she always prayed to have a baby girl with black hair and blue eyes. By the time my eyes started changing and they came green, so then I used to think maybe it's because I'm not beautiful enough in my mom's eyes. Maybe it's because my eyes are green, not blue. Maybe it's because my hair is no longer as dark and it's changing color. Really weird thoughts. But as kids, we do not make our parents seem like they're the bad ones. As kids, we take all responsibility, we take all the fault ourselves. As kids, we make everything mean something about ourselves. We're not gonna tarnish our parents. We're not gonna hate on our parents. As teenagers, we do. But as kids, our parents are amazing. Our parents are the best. As kids, we are the problem in our heads. So, yep. This is how generational trauma is passed from one generation to another. Because my mom's wounds made her feel like she had to search for love outside of her. My mom's wounds made her very dysregulated. So she could not show up fully as a loving mother. She had her wounds to deal with. And given that she was searching for love outside of her, given that she was trying to numb the pain through drugs, that passed on the message to her kids that her kids were also not enough. Her kids were also doomed. There was also something inherently wrong with her kids. And of course, this wasn't true. But her addiction and her absence made me and my siblings feel that there's something wrong with us, that we're not lovable, that we're unworthy, that we're different, that we don't fit in. Then, of course, to continue speaking a little bit about what it felt like living with my mom before I dive deeper and start mentioning my sisters and the rest of our lives with mom. Because my mom had this problem with drugs, I was constantly going back and forth between my nana's house and my mom's house. Then this huge attachment was also created towards my grandma. So every time my mom would come clean and I would have to go back living with her, it felt really sad for me to leave my grandma. So then there was a lot of confusion in little Nikki's head growing up. There was a lot of sadness, like I wanted to be with both my mom and my grandma. But of course, because of my mom's way of living, and my grandma was being strict with my mom did not want to live with my grandma. And when they tried, there were too many arguments. So having them both under the same roof was not possible. Having them both under the same roof made me worry and stress when I was at school because I wouldn't know what I'm going to go back home to, because I knew that they were always having arguments, because they were not agreeing on the way my mom was living life. But at the same time, I wanted to have them both under the same roof. So this going back and forth between my mom and my grandma created a lot of unsafety, created a lot of worry, a lot of stress, a lot of despair. And a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old does not understand what's happening. The only thing that as a 6-year-old or as a kid, the only thing that I made all of this mean about myself is that everywhere I go, there's problems, that I attract problems, that I was born to suffer. And then, of course, there was also the story of my dad when I shared this in episode 7. So I had a drug-addicted mother, I had no father, and I had a grandma who was trying her best to raise me in the best way possible. But of course, my grandma was the mother of my mom. So my grandma went through a lot. My grandma was going through a whole other emotional roller coaster because, first of all, my grandma had her own wounds from her own childhood. She lost her mom when she was 4. My grandma was very naughty as a kid, and especially since she did not have a mom, the people who were raising her and trying to take care of her would not be as loving as her mom was. So my grandma was going through her own emotional roller coaster, so she could not always show up in the best way possible for me because she had her moments of despair, she had her own depression, she had her own sadness, her own tears, her own anger. So there was a lot of instability growing up. There was a lot of why me? I was a victim when I was a kid, but unfortunately I carried that victim mindset with me when I was an adult too. And when we have a victim mindset, it is one of the toughest mindsets to have because you're always feeling sorry for yourself. You're not realizing that you are the creator. You become the victim. And as adults, we're not victims. As adults, we need to accept that, yes, it's true. At one point or another in my life, I was a victim to my circumstances. However, now as an adult, it is my responsibility to heal. But until I realized that, life was tough. Life felt like I was climbing a mountain wearing skis, literally. Then my mom's addiction kept on getting worse and worse. Because my mom's addiction was getting worse, I felt the need and I felt the urge to live with her, just in case something bad happened to her. My mom had many near-to-death experiences. We would be sleeping in our home, me and her, and I'd wake up and find her passed out and having to call the ambulance or having to call my grandma. So I wanted to stay with my mom because I feared that I was going to lose her and that if she was alone without me in the house, I would definitely lose her. But at the same time, I craved the safety and the peace that my grandma created for me. So I felt very torn growing up. I felt very confused of what I should be doing, where I should be staying. And unfortunately, living with my mom meant that since she kept on looking for love outside of her, living with my mom meant that I also had to live with the different partners she had. And not all of her partners really liked me. Some of her partners were really nasty, actually. And apart from also having to deal with these really nasty partners that she had, there were days nights actually, where I'd wake up in the middle of the night because I hear the door closing and my mom would have gone because she would need to get more drugs. But when she went to buy the drugs, she didn't just buy the drugs and came back home. Sometimes she would stay there. So she would think that I would be asleep, but of course I used to hear the door. I was a light sleeper because of all the problems that we had going on in our house. So from the moment that she closed the front door till the moment that she returned, I would be crying in a 3-story house, really afraid of the monsters and the boogeyman, and I could have easily gone outside and knocked on our neighboring door because our neighboring door meant that my grandma would open the door for me and I would be able to sleep with her. But I didn't want to snitch on my mom ever again after what happened when I was 4 years old. So I felt a lot of fear growing up. I felt alone. I felt that I was not enough. I felt that my mom was taking drugs because she was not happy with me. I felt that my mom's problem was created because she was a single mom. I made it mean that everything was my fault. I made it mean that I was unlovable, unworthy, the worst person to be alive because my dad didn't want me, and because he didn't want me, my mom ended up taking drugs, and then my mom didn't want me to. It's not true. My mom actually really wanted me, but that's what I made it mean as a kid. Apart from staying alone in the house, I was a light sleeper because also, apart from all the problems, when I was 6 years old, my grandma and I were sleeping in my grandma's house, and because there was drug lords involved and shady people involved in our lives, someone put our house on fire while my grandma and I were sleeping in it. I was in survival mode constantly. Wow. I had forgotten so much about my childhood. And now that I'm remembering all of this, I'm amazed at how harsh I was on myself, even now as an adult. Like, I should have so much compassion for my story, my journey, and why up until 5 years ago I was so dysregulated. I should have so much compassion for showing up not in my best self sometimes in relationships, because love for me is not rainbows and butterflies. Love for me is heartbreak. Love for me is pain. And love for me, I can't say it was inexistent because I had a lot of love in my life, but it was conditional. I was loved when I would not snitch on my mom. I was loved when I would shut up. I was loved when I did what my mom wanted me to do. And in moments where I didn't agree with her, because of course then I was growing up and I started speaking up. When that happened, there would be big arguments between me and my mom. And then I had bigger arguments with my grandma because I would stand up for my mom with my grandma. My grandma made that mean that I don't respect her. Yeah. Apart from all of this, when my mom did not want to let my grandma know, and by the way, my grandma did a lot of things to try and mitigate what was happening, to mitigate the risk and everything. She even installed a camera in her house on her front door so she could see whether my mom is actually sleeping with me at night or not. And apart from all of this, when my grandma installed this camera, my mom could not leave the house as freely as she used to. So then my mom decided to hide what was happening from my grandma, that she would tell my grandma that we're going on a weekend break or that we're going somewhere. And this was a horrible time in my life. We would go on a weekend break, but not the weekend break you're thinking. We would go in a hotel with some of my mom's friends. And my mom, back in the day, she had a lot of money. So, I mean, she had to have a lot of money to be able to sustain her crack addiction because crack is really expensive. So people would come with her, so-called friends, which weren't friends at all. And we would go in this hotel and we'd spend 3 days there. I would be locked up in my mom's room because she didn't trust me with anyone. She was overprotective when it came to that. However, I would be locked up for 3 days in the same room as my mom, whilst my mom was passed out from smoking crack. And all I wanted was to go with my grandma and to go to my auntie's house with my 7 cousins whom I loved playing with so much. I just couldn't. And then her so-called friends would come inside the room, take money from my mom as if it was monopoly money. I'd try to wake up my mom to tell her that they're taking money from her. I'd fight with her friends to not take my mom's money. And then she'd wake up and she'd tell me to shut up because she needs to sleep and that it's okay that they're taking money. She allows them to do so. And I would just look at this goddess that I had in front of my eyes, this beautiful woman, this smart woman, this funny woman, this witty woman, this rich woman, and all of a sudden she was losing everything. She was losing her beauty, she was losing her charm, she was losing her home, she was losing me, because obviously then my grandma was realizing what was happening, and my grandma made it a point that I started staying with her fully then. And although that's what I really needed, to stay fully with my grandma because I'm much more safe with my grandma, at the same time, the guilt, the worry, the fear, like some days I couldn't sleep because I didn't know where my mom is. Other days I couldn't eat because I didn't know where my mom was and I had a lot of anxiety. On other days I couldn't eat because I felt guilty that I was eating and I'm not sure if my mom is eating. There was this whole roller coaster of emotions. And apart from these, then since I was no longer living with my mom, since I was no longer taking care of my mom would just disappear for days, sometimes even weeks. And during those days, I still had to go to school. I still had to go and show up as if everything was normal at home. And the only thing I could think of was whether my mom was still alive or not. I always feared that I'm going back home, and instead of my grandma telling me we found her, she was going to tell me that they found my mom dead somewhere. And in all of this, I had to keep a pretty face, smile, and continue with my schoolwork, act as if nothing was wrong. And it was very hard for me to make friends in primary school. I had some friends, and I remember them so clearly. They were so kind, the few friends I had. But I always felt different, especially when they used to invite me over to their house, and then I could not invite them back over to our house. Of course, because of the turbulence there was in my home. In my primary, I used to go to a private school, so most of the kids there were coming from really good backgrounds. So yeah. In fact, when in my secondary I swapped to a public school instead of a private school, that had helped me a real lot. Because I stopped feeling so different. I stopped feeling so ashamed. I stopped feeling like I had to continue hiding all parts of me. Of course, I kept on hiding our issue, our situation, until I met my best friend, Francesca, and she was the first person I told the story to. But I remember she must have thought in the beginning that I was saying some story from some book. But of course, then she could see what was happening too. Anyways, although my grandma managed to get me out of those crack houses where I used to be surrounded by really annoying people, most of my mom's friends disliked me a lot. I was a very smart kid. I had a smart mouth. I knew how to stand up for myself. I knew how to stand up for my mom. So they really didn't like me. And I remember one of them clearly, and he told her, "Claire, get this kid out of here. She's so annoying. She doesn't stop crying. She doesn't stop arguing, like, get this kid out of here." And Of course, when you're hearing these people saying these things about you and you already have these beliefs that you're not good enough, that there's something wrong with you, and then these strangers are saying these things about you, you're like, definitely there's something wrong with me. Definitely I am the problem. No wonder why my mom's so hooked on drugs. No wonder she's so disappointed, because she has a really annoying daughter. She has a daughter that she's not proud of. And these beliefs, and because my mom used to tell me to not end up like her, and she used to tell me that the way to not end up like her was by studying and getting a degree and having my own career, having my own house, having my own money. So given that my mom used to tell me all of this, although I felt very similar or maybe even worse to what my mom felt growing up, because I didn't have a dad, I didn't have a stable mom, but the way I used to escape from all of this was by studying hard. I always loved studying, I always loved reading, so my escape was not school. I didn't like school, but my escape was the books, the academics. So I used to study really hard. I used to read a lot of books. So that was my escape when I was a kid. When I was a teenager, I had different escapes, maybe not so healthy ones too. But although I loved academics so much, I truly believe that since I had a big belief that my mom would be happy if her daughter was better, I pushed my way. I achieved my way to self-worth. I still didn't feel worthy, but I achieved and achieved and achieved, and I studied hard and I always tried to better myself. And that's how I became a hyperachiever, which just because I achieved amazing things in my life doesn't mean that being a hyperachiever is a good thing, because I had attached my worth to my achievements. Up until 2 years ago, I didn't feel worthy unless I was achieving something. And nowadays, I'm learning more to accept myself fully and to know that I am worthy even when I'm not achieving anything out of the blues. So yes, I used to think that if I get good grades, if I'm an A student, my mom would stop taking drugs. And my mom loved school. She instilled this belief in me to love, not school. I hated school, but to love the academic part of school. And so I used to be excited to show her my results. Like I used to get straight A's, and she would still be like either passed out, either in a really bad mood and throwing a whole tantrum because she doesn't have money to buy drugs, or she was stuck in her victim mindset, or she would just fuck off from home because she couldn't take my grandma's strictness anymore. So even when I was achieving what I thought my mom wanted me to achieve, I still felt like I could not make my mom happy. And that instilled the belief even more that there's something inherently wrong with me. Then there were the police raids where they'd come to our house randomly, 3 policemen knocking on our doors and coming inside, raiding our house. And my grandma was such an innocent woman, guys. She was such an innocent woman that I felt so sorry that my grandma had to go through all of that. I felt unsafe in my own house. I was always afraid that they're going to take my mom away, but they never did, because of course my mom never sold drugs. She always used to say, definitely, like whenever my grandma used to question her, my mom used to tell her, Ma, I would never be able to sell drugs. Don't worry about that. I have such a strong addiction, such a big addiction, that if I try to do so, which I will not do, I will end up taking all of it. So the police never took my mom away when they raided her in our home, but there were car chases by policemen, and in one of the car chases, they did take my mom away. It was me and my mom. It was around 2 a.m. and my mom took me out with her because she needed to buy drugs, and her partner was at home and she would not trust me alone with any men. So she woke me up to go with her to buy drugs, and I was crying. I was telling her, Ma, please, let's not go. Please try and sleep. Please, please go take a bath, something, but just shut up and sleep. I know you really want this, smoke a whole packet of cigarettes if need be, but please, let's stay home. Anyways, and we had driven from one point in Malta, in the north of Malta, to the south of Malta, and on the way back, she was happy, she was excited, she finally got her drugs, she was gonna shut up and I feel sad to say this, but sometimes I preferred my mom on drugs because she was nicer, she was calmer, she was more regulated. And when she was off the drugs, she was angry, she was in a bad mood. Of course, it's understandable. If I feel like eating a chocolate and I don't have chocolate at home, I also turn into a little monster, especially if someone would have eaten it for me. But yes, we were on the way back home and I hear the sirens of the police and they stop us and they start to search my mom's car. I knew that they were going to find her drugs and they arrested my mom. And I was crying my heart out because I didn't want my mom to be arrested. At the same time, my mom never trusted me with any men. And all of a sudden, I was in a car with, I think, more than 3 men. I felt very unsafe. I knew that they were going to call my grandma and that all hell was going to break loose. And I'm not saying all of this to bash my mom. Yes, we can all agree that this was not the right parenting. Yes, we can all agree that my mom made mistakes, but who doesn't make mistakes? And you might be saying, but yes, I make mistakes with my kids, but not like this. I'm glad. I'm so glad that you do not do these mistakes with your kids because I can only imagine the pain that your kids would go through if you are making such mistakes. And I feel so sorry for the kids that are out there and are still experiencing the same thing I used to experience. So for the teachers out there who can sense something is wrong, for the people out there who can notice that there's something wrong in this child's life, a child that you know, and you can notice that something is off, something is wrong. My suggestion is be nice to that kid, be kind to that kid without bashing their mom or their dad, because I wanted to be seen. I wanted love from my teachers. I wanted love from people around me, but I didn't want anyone to bash my mom because for me, when that happened, that meant that you're not loving me. And I always put my mom first. I always put her before me. So if there's anyone who knows, can sense that there's something wrong with these kids, provide them love and safety in the ways that you can. And kids that are hardest to love need love the most. I don't know how many times growing up I heard it from family members, from teachers, from friends, that I'm annoying, that I'm rude, that there's something wrong with me, that I have issues. And it's true, I was rude. It's true, I was annoying, but it's true, I used to cry a lot. I did all of that because of what I was going through. So I'm not saying that to allow kids to be annoying. I'm not saying that to allow kids to be rude, but we can correct kids in a loving way. We can let them know that they are still loved even when they're annoying, that they are still loved even when they're acting rude. And yes, keep this reminder. Kids that are hardest to love need love the most. And yes, sometimes it's hard to be nice to these kids, to love these kids. It's easier to love a girl who's obedient, who's nice, who's quiet, who's friendly, who's bubbly. Way easier. But that's not how life works for everyone, unfortunately. So yes, I'm not saying all of this to bash my mom. I'm just sharing my truth, my reality, showing you how generational traumas pass from one generation to another. If I don't heal, I will pass this same trauma to my future kids, if any. And in fact, when I was taking care of my sister, when I was raising Yana, I started noticing some mistakes I was doing with Yana because of my own dysregulation, because of my own wounded inner child. And of course, I made mistakes. And I used to feel so guilty and ashamed about the mistakes I've done with Yana. Tiny mistakes, small mistakes, because I loved her deeply. I always took care of her properly. But there were still parts that I could have done better whilst Yana was growing up. But I finally released the shame and I've forgiven myself. I've had deep one-to-ones with Yana to let her know that if I ever made her feel like she's not good enough, that it's not because she actually isn't, but it's because of my own wounds that I was dumping on her. But yes, I've released the shame, the anger, and I still make mistakes with Yana till this day. But the difference is that I go up to her and I apologize. I go up to her and I let her know that it's not her fault and that it's my responsibility to be a regulated adult. And when I started healing, I started worrying a lot about the maybe collateral damage that I passed on to Yana. But the more I healed, the more regulated I became, the more I reparented my inner child, I started seeing Yana healing too. And even before she went on her own healing journey, I want to say that the same way trauma is passed from one generation to another, healing is also passed from one generation to another. My sister nowadays is so calm. Wait, let me go back a little bit. My sister was a very, very hyperactive kid. My sister was the opposite of what I was as a kid. We were like, if you see us in real life, I am very pale. Yana has a very nice tan. I look like Snow White. Yana looks like Pocahontas. So we're very different in our appearance, but we're also very different character-wise. Very, very different. I was always obedient, trying to be the good girl. I've had my moments, of course, because of all the trauma I was experiencing and living. But yes, Yana was unapologetically herself. She doesn't care if she's gonna hurt your feelings, but whatever she has to say, she's gonna say it. She was always up to some mischief. She was a rebel. She was rebelling against what was happening in the house. But nowadays, Yana is so regulated. She's so calm. She's such a lovely, lovely young lady. She wears her heart on her sleeve. She's more understanding than she's ever been before. Generational healing is real. The same way trauma is passed on from one generation to the next, healing is passed on from one generation to the next. And we have another sister, Ellie. She's also a beautiful, beautiful soul. And Ellie does not live with me, but she is a big, big part of my life. A big, big part of Yana's life too. And I'm gonna be talking about this soon because us three being separated was something that was really, really painful in my teenage years. Actually, I'm gonna talk about it now because this is my podcast and I can show up perfectly imperfect on it. I didn't prepare for this episode. I didn't script for this episode because I felt like I wanted this episode to be genuine, to be raw, to be authentic. Not that the others aren't, of course they are, but this is my most personal episode to date and it's my mom's birthday. And if my mom was here on her birthday, I don't know if we would have celebrated it together. I have no idea. Maybe she'd be passed out somewhere, maybe she'd be in rehab, or maybe she would have come clean, and maybe we would have been spending it together with her. Anyways, Ellie is my baby sister, but far from a baby. Ellie held space for me in my life in a way that no adult ever could. She is bright, she is emotionally intelligent, and she is the definition of love. And when I was 10 years old, Yana came into my life, and immediately I knew that my life was no longer just my life. I now had a sister who also was being brought up in the same circumstances, in the same conditions as me, without a dad and with a drug-dependent mother. And 3 years later, Ellie came into our lives. But Ellie came in different conditions. Ellie's dad and my mom were in a relationship. My mom was clean for a while. And I think it was the first time ever that we experienced a family setting with my mom. When my mom relapsed again, after I think the longest clean slate that she had, Yana and I were back fully with my grandma, and Ellie's dad took full responsibility of Ellie, and Ellie was with her dad. And for me, this did not make any sense. And emotionally, it shattered me in a lot of ways. Not that what did not make sense to me wasn't that Ellie's dad took full responsibility, more like hats off to him, because he was the only dad from Claire's daughter's dads that stepped up, that actually acted like a dad. So kudos to him, sending him more strength and more love. But what did not make sense to me was that all my aunties had all their kids in one place. All our extended family had all their kids in one place. Like, we were the first family in such a big family that the siblings were separated. And I couldn't believe that this was happening to us. And until I was by myself, I could handle the stress, the pain, the sadness. But when I realized that now there are two other kids, and I knew exactly what they were feeling growing up, when I knew that there were two other kids feeling the same feelings I felt growing up, and maybe their own experience as well, killed me. It shattered me in ways that no 13-year-old should have been shattered in. To help my sisters not feel exactly the same that I felt whilst growing up, I used to step up a lot. I used to make it a point to meet up, all three of us, to stay in contact, close contact with Ellie, to make sure that Yana and Ellie, because there was not a big age gap between them, to make sure that Yana and Ellie grow up together as well. I used to go to their school concerts and help them with whatever I could. Of course, in the capacity that I could, because at the end of the day, I was still very wounded as well. But my sisters were very happy the way I showed up in their life. But I could never, and no one else could never replace their mother. So my mother's absence, my mother's addiction, made Yana and Ellie also feel unworthy, unloved, that there's something wrong with them and that they're different from everyone else out there. So then later on when we were growing up in our teenage years, Ellie is still a teenager, Yana is in her early 20s. But for all three of us, love meant that we have to work hard to earn it, that we have to overgive, we have to people please, that we can't trust anyone, that we will always end up being left or alone. So all three of us had to work really, really hard. And as I said earlier, the more I healed, the more I could see also my sisters healing. And then they went on their own healing journey. And I'm sending them so much love from here. They are everything to me. And once again, guys, I know that maybe a lot of judgment is coming up right now, but our mom always kept reassuring us that her addiction is not because of us, that she loved us dearly, that there's nothing wrong with us. She kept on telling us all these things. She kept on telling us that her addiction is because of her own problems and that she's trying hard. And she really did try hard. To go back a little bit to my mom, to get a clearer picture of living with a drug addict, you might just, when someone says that, you might just hear like living with a drug addict. Oh my God, they have a family member who takes drugs. But living with a drug addict meant that my mom would be gone for days, as I said earlier, not knowing whether she's still alive. It meant that we didn't see her or speak to her or know about her whereabouts or safety. It meant that we spent days searching for her with the police, reported missing, and knocking door to door on drug lords' doors, because I knew where they lived, because I was always with my mom when I was younger, putting myself in danger and mixing with such men from a very young age. And I had to show up as a tough cookie. I used to knock on these people's doors and, where's my mom? I looked strong. And in the moment, I didn't feel fear. But of course, I was putting so much stress on my body that then it manifested all that stress, that fear, that suppressed emotions. They manifested into a really tough autoimmune disease. The symptoms of the autoimmune disease started around when I was 7 years old, but back then we didn't know it was an autoimmune disease, and it was excruciating pain, always in hospital. And when my mom passed away, so I was 25, I was finally given the diagnosis of this autoimmune disease, and everything started to make sense. But yes, living with a drug addict meant days of not eating anything at all. Even the smell of food would make you feel sick until we found her. Until we find her, take her to hospital, or maybe hospital would call us or the police would call us. And until the merry-go-round starts all over again for the millionth time. Life with mom felt like she was Jerry and we were Tom. Proofreading my mom's book these last couple of days made me realize that we shared very similar limiting beliefs. That I went through very similar stages in my teenage years, the rebellion, the partying, the looking for love outside of you. The difference between my mom and I was that she instilled in me the fear of ending up like her. She was strict, she was very disciplined with me. You might be saying strict, disciplined, but trust me, guys, my mom used to take my urine tests randomly. My mom used to smell my fingers when I came in from school or from somewhere. She was so strict. I could not sleep at anyone's house except for one friend or two friends, and she would call their mom and she would need to know where I am. So at least the foundation was very solid. She gave me a very solid foundation. Of course, when she left, when she would leave us again, or when she was in rehab, I would let my rebel side out a little bit, but I always kept on studying. My mom always kept on telling me that to not end up like her in life, I have to study. So I have to have something that no one can take away from me. So she instilled really good values and qualities. But even though she did all that, her disappearance every now and then created an abandonment wound for me. And that meant that as a kid, I made my mom's addiction and absence mean that I'm not good enough, that there's something wrong with me. And so even though my brain had some different rewiring to hers, I still felt super different from everyone. I still felt like I did not fit in, like there's something wrong with me. And I was also very insecure like my mom. I also tried to numb the pain through being in a relationship. I also used to hope that Prince Charming will come and save me one day, or my dad would come and save me one day. I also tried to numb the pain through partying. But through it all, I kept on studying. Through it all, I kept on knowing that I can't take my mom's spot. As if I did, it meant that I would lose my mom. It meant that there would nobody for Nana to take care of her the way I did. And I also did not want my sisters, Diana and Deli, to not have a mother figure in their life. So although my mom was not perfect, she was not the perfect mom, she was so strict. She instilled in me and my siblings beliefs about ourselves. She made it a point to let us know we are loved, we are worthy, that her addiction wasn't because she didn't love us. Of course, me and my siblings made this mean something about ourselves. So, as I mentioned earlier, we people pleased, we overgave, we worked hard for love because we learned that love meant heartbreak. And once again, guys, I am not saying all of this to make my mom look like a bad person. Actually, quite the opposite. I'm sharing all of this to honor my mom, to honor her battle with the fierce addiction that took over her smile, her beauty, her kindness, her standards, her charisma, her kids, her family, until it took her life. May my mom's story show you that no matter how beautiful you are from the inside and the out, that if you have limiting beliefs about yourself, you will not believe that you are beautiful inside out. If you have such limiting beliefs about yourself, no matter how loved you are, you will never realize it. In fact, in many of my posts that I share about my mom, that's what I say. If only she knew how loved she was. If you have beliefs about yourself that go against you, that's what you'll keep believing. I hope that my mom's story teach you that no matter the men that come into your life, or women, nobody can save you but yourself. That no matter the daughter she had, that she knew that she was going to get unconditional love from this daughter, that this daughter was going to be only hers because the dad didn't want to be present. Even her daughter didn't save her. Then she had two other amazing, beautiful daughters. Even those other two daughters couldn't save her because nobody can save you but yourself. May my mom's story teach you that drugs are not the real problem. They are there to numb the pain. If you have a drug problem right now, stop trying to quit the drugs. What you need to really focus on is, what is the problem? What has hurt you in life? What are you trying to numb from these drugs? Of course, what I meant by do not quit the drugs is, of course, quit the drugs, but don't just quit the drugs and have a cross addiction over something else. Heal the wounds that led you to drugs. That's what you need to do. My mother was a highly emotional, intelligent. She was super, super smart. In fact, we had a joke in all our family. I used to hear them telling her, Claire, if you used all that smartness that you use for all the bad things you managed to get yourself into, by now you'd be a billionaire. She was super, super smart. She wore her heart on her sleeve as she knew what it felt like to be alone in her feelings. In fact, her favorite song was, as sad as it sounds, To Be Left Outside Alone. My mom wrote a book about her life, and since she passed away, I've read it so many times. I remember we were at a hospital appointment, me and my mom, and for her, and she told me, Nick, I really want you to read my book. And I told her, Ma, I assure you, I am not against you for writing this book, because we're talking around nearly 10 years ago. So of course there were some people who were against my mom for writing this book, because back in the day, everyone was still trying to hide their dirty laundry, not air it. So I reassured my mom, like, I'm not against you. I'm behind you every step of the way. If this is making you feel better, do it. I love you. I love you with all the good, the bad, and your journey. But I told her I can't read it, Ma. And she told me why not. And I remember the reason why I couldn't read it was because I couldn't have this book confirming to me all that I knew that my mom was feeling. Because I know my love wasn't saving her. So reading that book was going to confirm to me all my worries about my mom. It was going to confirm to me my biggest fears. I knew it was going to give me a better insight to my mom's feelings, to my mom's world, to my mom's brain, which I already had quite a lot because my mom was very open with me. She was very honest. She was very, very open. But knowing that my love wasn't enough to save her killed me in ways I can't explain. So reading that and knowing further that my mom felt all of that and that I couldn't change the way she felt about herself felt way too bad. So I didn't read my mom's book when she was still alive, but I think I read it for a million times after she passed away, especially in the beginning. It was a means of keeping her alive, of how I could listen to her voice and her funny stories. But from my mom's story, you realize that awareness is not enough. My mom had so much awareness, and that's the thing. The awareness felt worse for my mom because she was aware of what she should be doing, and she still couldn't do it. She kept on trying till her last breath. The day she passed away was a day before she was gonna enter another rehabilitation program. Not that it was going to work. Maybe not. But it's not that I think that, oh my God, if she did it, she would still be here. No. Because I don't think I can count all the rehab programs my mom has done on both hands. So it's not that I didn't believe my mom could heal through rehab anymore. Nowadays, I realize that my mom was getting the help needed. She was getting the awareness. But I really believe that if she was willing to do the inner child healing, that's when my mom would have healed, maybe. But anyways, we'll never know. Everything happens for a reason, and I'm going to share something around my mom's death soon. But yes, she kept on trying till her last breath. And as I said, not that we had high hopes in the rehab that she was going to do, but for us, rehab meant that we get to enjoy mom a little bit more, that we get to enjoy her clean, that we get to have her full attention maybe. We had accepted that we had to treat our mom as if she had a natural disease, that when she had her good periods, we celebrate her and enjoy our time with her. And when she had her bad periods, we had to grieve her. And as sad as it was, we had to accept that this was Claire's disease. Self-inflicted, yes, but it was all coming from her mental health. So yes, even another failed rehab meant something big for us. It meant more love from our mom, more kindness, more compassion, more happiness. I hope that my mom's story helped you realize that having the awareness of why you're acting the way that you do and knowing what you should do when you're triggered or when you have a drug craving or any other craving and you're still not managing, it's not because you're weak. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's not because you are playing the victim card. It's because the awareness on its own is not enough. You know what you should do and you can't do it. You feel helpless. So what is going to help you to go from the awareness step to the next step in your life, to the next phase in your life? And that is, you need to heal your childhood wounds. You need to heal the child that has been hurting all along. You need to reparent your inner child. And it might sound like a fancy word, a big word, but genuinely, if you do this with a coach, or with someone who does inner child healing, it's nothing, guys. It is such a beautiful journey. All my clients, they enjoy their sessions. We have such a good time together. My experience of inner child healing, yes, I used to cry sometimes, of course, but I either cried in the session, tears of releasing, or I cried every single day because I didn't know what was going on in my life and I was so depressed. So if you want to go from the awareness step to the step where, okay, now I know what I should be doing and I'm actually managing to do it finally, that is when you need to go from point A to point B. You need to, in between, heal the inner child, which helps you regulate your nervous system and helps you regulate your subconscious brain. Once you have that in place, that's when you can continue exploring further with somatics to release trauma, all the trauma from the body and the embodiment. And that is exactly what we do in my one-on-one coaching program, and that's exactly what we do in my group coaching programs. And when there's a group coaching program, it's beautiful because you're with very similar people, you feel love, you feel that you're not alone on your journey, because I know that this journey feels very lonely. I used to feel very alone in what I was feeling. I wasn't alone. I was surrounded by people. I always had many friends. I was always a very outgoing person. I was always, as I said earlier, achieving stuff, going to, horse riding, piano lessons, swimming, this, that. So I had a very good social life, but I still felt very, very alone in this journey. So the group coaching will really help you with that if you're someone that you're tired of feeling alone. But yes, I hope my mom's story teaches you that awareness is not enough. It's good, it's the first step, but with awareness on its own, it's even worse actually, because you know what you should be doing and you can't do it, and that's horrible. So to recap, the lessons from my mom here are: childhood trauma shapes adult behaviors, limiting beliefs become the lens that we live through, love cannot save you. Love cannot save your unhealed trauma. Not even daughters can save their mothers or kids. Awareness alone is not enough. Healing requires nervous system regulation, inner child healing, and subconscious rewiring. You cannot be saved by your partners, by your parents, by your children. Only you can save yourself. So those are the lessons from my mom's story. However, I said so many things that so many people can maybe judge my mom, that she was not a good mom and this and that. But I want to share that my mom was beautiful. My mom was rich. My mom was always well dressed. She was well educated, even though she finished school early. She played tennis. She did karate. She modeled abroad. She made the best seafood pasta. She had a spotless house, always a clean, spotless house. That's where I get my cleanliness from. Thanks or no thanks, because sometimes it's too much. I always want the house clean. Our mom managed to turn every house that she ended up renting when she lost her house. There used to be these cold houses, and she managed to always turn it into these warm, nicely decorated houses. Our mom loved scented candles and incense sticks. She always smelled so nice and exotic. She loved perfume. She took us to hospital appointments when she was clean. She taught us to go to the dentist. She taught us really good body hygiene. She taught us to be active, to train and stay healthy. She taught us to read, to journal, to meditate. She taught us how to use positive affirmations. She introduced us to books on how you can heal yourself, the law of attraction, The Secret. She took us out in nature to see the sunset, the sunrise, to collect shells, to play under or over when there were waves in the north of Malta. And it was an exciting, it was only with my mom that I used to go there because we lived in the south of Malta. So my mom used to drive all the way to, it's called Ain Tufeha. She was disciplined. She taught us how to laugh unconditionally. She taught us not to judge others because you would never know what they're going through behind closed doors in their own heads. And all that I am today is thanks to her and my grandma. Thanks to my mom's good and bad. The parts of me that are kind, loving, genuine are all thanks to my mom. And the parts of me that begged for love, stayed in the wrong places when I should have left. My past dysregulated nervous system, the fact that my body was shutting down, my autoimmune, and the insecurities are all thanks to her addiction too. However, it is my responsibility to heal them. I can't keep pointing fingers at my mom. My mom had her own generational trauma that she passed on to her kids, but now it's our responsibility to heal. My mother was not just a drug addict. My mother was way more than that. May all that my mother was remind you to never judge what you see in front of your eyes. If anyone saw my mom in her last year of being alive, no one would assume all the good that she was. The only title that she would have taken was a drug addict. No one would assume that she's a mother, that she's a daughter, that she used to play tennis, she used to model, that she used to cook us the most amazing seafood pasta. No one would ever assume all the good that she was if you had to see her in her final stages. Actually, I believe you would cross the road if you were walking near my mother in her final stages, as you'd feel afraid of her walking addiction. So may this remind you to never judge one another. May this remind you that those who succumb to drugs do not do so because they are less than us, but because they found a way to numb their pain. And the only difference between them and us is just luck. We are not superior, we are not better, we just found different ways to numb the pain. And there will be moments where we will judge one another, and there will be moments where you will judge yourself, and that's okay. We're human, even I do that sometimes, but the most important thing is to become aware that you're doing so and to sit down and stop shaming and blaming yourself. And that could look like something like this. I don't know, you went out last night, you promised yourself that you're not going to sniff cocaine, and you ended up doing it again. If you're going to wake up and you're going to shame and blame yourself, I'm so stupid, I did again, I don't have balls to stop, blah, blah, blah. No, the way you go about this is, yes, be aware that you want to stop doing this, that this is not serving you, but be kind and compassionate. And the more you're going to be kind and compassionate towards yourself, the less you're going to need to numb the pain through cocaine, through other drugs, through any method that you use to numb your pain. If you're going to shame and blame yourself, you're going to end up like my mom. You're going to end up wanting more, because then there's more shame, there's more pain, and you're going to need to numb that pain even more. So be careful with this shaming and blaming cycle, because we all do it a lot and it's really bad. So stop shaming and blaming yourself. Be kind and compassionate towards yourself. Yes, be aware that you want to stop doing what you're doing, but forgive yourself. And then ask yourself, what can I do to not fall into that trap again? So for example, let's say you said you're not going to take drugs when you go out, and you're there, you're sober, and you're saying, I'm definitely not taking anything tonight. Then you take 1 drink, 2 drinks, 3 drinks, 4 drinks, you're tipsy. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, fuck this. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, one life. We'll see tomorrow what will happen. So if you know what's triggering you, if you know what's shifting between your conscious decision and your unconscious decision, if you know that when you're sober, you say that you don't want to do these things and then you end up doing them anyways because you had a few beers or a few drinks. So be strict with yourself and say, okay, going forward until I stop doing this, I'm not going to go out and drink. Instead, I'm going to ask my friends if they want to go camping. Instead, I'm going to ask my friends if they want to go skiing abroad. Instead, I'm going to ask my friends if they want to go swimming, do a barbecue, go climb a mountain, do this, do that. We all complain that there's not much to do in life, but there is. You just need to slowly start shifting your attention. The kinder and compassionate you are towards yourself, the kinder and compassionate you are towards others, the kinder and compassionate you are towards others, the better relationships you're going to have, the less fighting, the less arguing, the more calm your life is going to be. And at the beginning, maybe calmness is not what you're after because you're so used to this chaotic lifestyle. Like for me, living my life in drug dens, crack houses, police chasing us, car raids, house on fire, being smuggled when I was 1 year old by my mom's partner to use my nappy to take drugs from one country to another. Like, I don't remember this when I was 1 year old, but my nervous system definitely remembers it because my mom was wailing, she was screaming, she was crying, and her partner was hitting her. So all of this chaos, I was used to all of this chaos. So for me, peace, calmness felt foreign. I remember one of my exes used to tell me, "You love arguing. We can't have one moment of peace with you." And it's true. He was right. At the time, maybe I was offended, but I accept it now today. And I've worked so hard to regulate my nervous system and through reparenting my inner child. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm perfect. We're never going to be perfect. We all have our shadow side. I have my good, I have my bad, but I am regulated. I am no longer dysregulated. I feel happiness when I wake up. I feel excitement when I wake up. I sleep at peace. And this is something I never had before, guys. I woke up depressed and I slept depressed. I used to wake up praying for the day when my time was up from this planet. And I'm not saying this to sound morbid. I'm saying this because it was the truth. The good news is I don't feel like that anymore. Now I'm afraid of when I'm going to die. Like, I want to live forever. You and I are going to live forever. Anyways, sorry about my singing, but I need to release some steam. This episode was tough for me. Yes, it was hard to relive all of that again. I've put it in a tiny box. So yes, be kind and compassionate towards yourself and towards others. You're going to have more calmness into your life when you have this. And in the beginning, it's not going to be familiar, the calm, the peace, but the more you regulate your nervous system and if you go on your inner child healing journey, and you will love the peace. Now, I don't trade my peace for anything, genuinely. I'm going to start concluding slowly, I think. I don't know, because maybe I'll drift again. When someone asks me how come I came out on the other side of such a difficult upbringing, this is my reply. My mom's addiction broke us, but her love saved us. My mom loved us so much, and she made it a point that me and my sisters knew that we were the best thing that ever happened to her. After my mom passed away, I genuinely didn't know how to navigate life further. Imagine I had this one person that I genuinely loved with all my being. This one person that since I was born, since I can remember, my task was to keep her alive. She was not my Tamagotchi, but whoever had a Tamagotchi, you can imagine. She was a bigger rebel than the Tamagotchis, we know. I would have let an arm go to see my mom sober, clean, and healthy. Because growing up, the roles were reversed between me and my mom. I was parentified, I became the mom. And I was always chasing after her, always making sure she's fine, always helping her, doing all that she needed. And all of a sudden, so my life revolved around her. Her, my Nana, Yana and Deli, but mainly around my mom because she was the one that needed the most help. She was the one that was killing herself on a day-to-day basis. And I wasn't yet ready to accept to let my mom go. I wasn't yet ready to give up on her because I knew if I give up on her, it means she might pass away. And I wanted my mom. Her love, her hugs, her kindness. She understood me in a way that no one ever did till this day. So imagine having all of that and all of a sudden you receive a phone call. I remember it was my aunt. In the meantime, my sister had already read the article, but it was my aunt who called me and she asked me, "Nick, where's your mom?" And I was like, "How do you want me to know? I have no idea." She said she's somewhere, but God knows where she is. She was very uncontrollable, my mom. And my aunt told me there's an article online. And I told her, oh my God, what did she do? Did she rob somewhere? Because a day before she passed away, she called me asking me for money for drugs. And I told her I didn't want to give her any. This is another big story, guys. I will not go into it, but the money part, not wanting to give them money because they're killing themselves, at the same time feeling sorry for them because they're in big distress. Anyways, I didn't want to give her money. I was on a boat day with my friend, so I couldn't even meet her because most probably if I was on land, I'd feel sorry and end up meeting her. But yep, a day before, I couldn't give her money, and I called her in the evening to see how she is, and she did not pick up. And I said, she found somewhere to get money from. Now she doesn't answer me. But something felt off that night. I was very sad. I was crying a lot, and my mom was still alive, but something felt really sad. Even on the boat with my friends, I kept on telling one of my friends, I told him, I don't know why I'm so sad. Like, I can't get it. We're all here on the boat. It was all the group. It was a really nice group of friends. And we used to have really good times together. And still I felt sad. And I was thinking, like, what a downer. Like, why are you always sad? You're with your friends. Everything is fine. What's wrong with you? Anyways, and yes, so my aunt, I asked her, oh my God, did she rob somewhere? And my aunt told me, no, Nick, there's an article that a 45-year-old woman has been found dead from an overdose. And as I explained earlier, guys, my mom had a lot of near-to-death experiences, but this time I knew it was my mom. I was 100% sure it was my mom, because at around 4 p.m., both Yana and I felt super sick. In fact, my uncle and his partner picked up Yana because I was at the birthday party of a friend, and they picked up Yana because Yana was feeling really sick. And then I went home and I was also feeling really sick, and I thought we had COVID. And I know what time this was because Yana and I took a photo, and as soon as we took the photo, I removed the phone and Yana told me, Nick, I'm going to throw up. And I told her, oh my God, Yana, me too. And that photo was taken at 4:02. To be exact. And our mom's autopsy says that our mom passed away at around 4 p.m. And when I've spoken to Ellie was also very sick that day. So it's insane, the connection that us kids have with our mothers. When my aunt told me about the article, I felt fear running through all my body. It was like fire. My ears started ringing badly. My whole body started shaking, and I just dropped the phone. I knew with all my heart at this time it was our mom who passed away. I kept on calling my mom's phone. It was switched off, and I kept on calling it. Maybe there was a mistake. Maybe I was in a nightmare. And the funny part was, the part that hurt us the most was, since I can remember, since I was, I think, 5 years old, anytime my mom did something, the police used to contact me or my grandma. Anytime they needed help to find where she was. Anytime they didn't know where she was, they'd ask us. Anytime she did anything that bothered society, that bothered the police contacted us. And all police knew that my mom was a person who was known to the police. I'm not gonna hide behind this. This is the truth. And this is my mom's truth. And that's okay. But my mom she had been in this circle for more than 25 years. So the police knew very well who Claire Polidano was. So even when she committed a crime, the articles on all social media were mother of 3. So I know the police knew my mom had kids, and I know the police knew how much I took care of my mom. They knew I was like a mom to her. And the thing that hurt the most in this period was that no police came knocking on our doors to give us the news. So in that moment, my brain was fighting, saying, if it was my mom, they would have definitely came to tell us. So there's still hope that it's not your mom. So there are other women who take drugs in Malta. So it's normal that your mom's phone is always switched off. I kept on trying to calm myself down, but something deep inside me knew it was my mom. And to add more to the sad part was that there were articles all over the news where my mom she was covered, but she was being held out on a stretcher. She was being carried out on a stretcher from the place she passed away in. None of her kids, none of her siblings, not her mother, none of her family, no one got contacted to tell us what had just happened. My mom was more than that. My mom was not just a drug addict. My mom was not just another problematic person that the police got rid of, finally. No, my mom was more than that. And that really hurt us a real lot, especially after all the help they've always received from us when it came to my mom. Apart from saying all the negatives, shout out to someone that is part of the police department whom gave me the news. So I called him and told him, can I speak to you? And told me, I'm abroad. What's up, Nick? And I'm like, please, I need you. There's an article of a 45-year-old woman who passed away from an overdose. Please, can you check whether it's my mom? Because I went to the police station. They're not giving me information. And he's like, yes, definitely, for sure. Let me hang up and I'll get on it. I'll work on it. When I see my phone ringing, when I see his name on my phone, I didn't answer it. I didn't want to hear the news. And he kept on calling me for another 2 times and I didn't answer. And he messaged me, Nick, I have bad news. And that was the day that my mom passed away from an overdose. It was the day that the person that was with her decided to leave the room and not call an ambulance. And again, yes, maybe I can forgive this person because he was also on drugs and we can assume that he didn't know what he was doing. But if you have the balls to take drugs with people, prepare yourself before you take drugs to have the balls to call an ambulance when things go downhill. Because if you're taking drugs, there's always the possibility, there's always the chance, there's always the risk that someone passes out. And it doesn't need to be crack, heroin, smack, this, that. It could easily be ecstasy, it could easily be MDMA, it could easily be cocaine. You can never know how someone can react to a certain drug. So before you take drugs with people, make a conscious decision that when someone, if, God forbid, but it can happen, if something happens, you will stay with the person and you will deal with the consequences. And I know that in some countries, the law doesn't protect the person who calls. But you can always do it anonymously if need be. But yes, to the guy who left my mom die, we forgave you. We know what you're saying as well, but we forgave you and I will not mention it here. So to the man who let my mom pass away, we didn't forget, of course, but we forgave you. Or at least I can say I forgave you, so I don't speak on other people's behalves. But I forgave you so I can grieve my mom in peace instead of giving you the attention and giving you negative energy. I forgave you because I knew it was only going to harm me if I keep on living with anger. I forgave you not because my mom didn't mean anything to us. Actually, quite the opposite. My mom meant so much to us. More than you'll ever know, more than the love you'll ever experience, because if you have had ever experienced the love we experienced growing up, you would definitely not have closed the door on my mom and left her dying in the room alone. And guys, my mom's death, I think you might say obviously, but my mom's death broke me in ways I never knew I could break. I used to think my mom, what she couldn't experience with us as kids growing up, she'd experience with her grandkids. I used to think she'd be sober and we had this amazing plan for her that it was a really good plan. A plan that made sense. It was a plan we made together when I was 25 years old. So it was a plan that finally made sense. It was a plan that finally made sense to cater for her addiction in a sense, not to cater for her addiction. What I mean is to be aware that my mom was a past addict, that addicts are either getting better or they're getting worse. So the plan that we had was one that was going to help her work, but not work too much. to be able to continue attending therapy, to continue to be able to attend in groups. It was a really good plan, but she didn't make it to see the plan unfold, and that's just life. Sometimes we just gotta accept it. But in the beginning, my mom's death broke me. My mom's death broke me for many reasons. There was a lot of guilt because I started feeling like I started giving up on her. So I had the guilt of maybe if I stayed so attached to her, she wouldn't have died. But I've forgiven myself. I've worked through that guilt, and whenever it comes up, we will continue working with it. There was a lot of anger towards myself for going to Australia. Because a few months before my mom passed away, I returned back from Australia. But yes, there was anger that it's because I went living in Australia. Everything was chaotic with my mom, my grandma, and my sister. But in reality, thank God I did go to Australia, because in Australia was when I started my healing journey. And hadn't I had started my healing journey then, I don't know where I would be today. I wouldn't have been able to face my mom's death, I guess, and what was to come after, not just her death. And the thing that broke me the most in my life gave me the most light. And I never thought I would be saying this, because I thought after my mom's death, my autoimmune was really bad. I was very depressed. I started antidepressants. So I thought that I didn't know how I was going to push through, but I did so for Yana because Yana was living with me. However, everything happens for a reason in life. And as I explained earlier, my mom and I had very similar limiting beliefs, very similar subconscious brain. So that's why I was so depressed, because we shared the same limiting beliefs, the same traumas, same but different. And my mom's limiting beliefs led her to drugs. And so I don't know where my limiting beliefs were going to lead me to, but I know they were going to lead me to a very dark place, because I felt very exhausted, very tired. I was praying for a way out. So my mom's death was my rebirth. Maybe the driving forces were Yana and Ellie, because I didn't want them to end up without their big sister. I couldn't bear the thought of leaving them too, especially Yana, because Ellie was with her dad and Yana didn't have a dad. She was with me. So although I miss my mom with all my heart, and I would do anything to have just one other day with my mom, although I miss her with all my heart, I thank her wherever she is for the strength she sent my way. My mom's energy carried me throughout the worst 2 years of my life. The first 2 years without her were a nightmare. I still long to hear my mama's voice one last time, and to smell her, and to get one of the biggest hugs from her. I felt so comfortable in her arms and my Nana's arms. My best friend, my voice of reason, my journal, my confidant, my safe space, my biggest source of love. I still can't believe that my biggest fear became a reality 5 years ago, but it did. And I hope there's an afterlife where I can see you again. And this time you will be thriving into the person you are always meant to be. Me and my siblings, Yana and Ellie, will always be your legacy. And by looking at us, people can see the love that you've showered us with, not just the pain that we had to endure because of your addiction. To my sun, my moon, and all my stars, happy first birthday. To my sun, my moon, and all my stars. To my sun, my moon, and all my stars. To my sun, my moon, and all my stars, happy first birthday. We love you, we miss you, and thank you to who's still here listening to me blab and blab and blab for the longest podcast episode I've ever recorded. Thank you for staying throughout this whole episode. I know it wasn't an easy episode. It's tough. Let alone living it. So again, stop judging people. But yes, one major lesson from all of this, guys, is that nobody can save you. We've said that. But something that my mom's journey and death taught me is that you cannot save anyone but yourself. Thank you for being here with me. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you staying. I know it's been a long episode, and genuinely I hope that you've taken from this what you've taken from this, the purpose. You've taken from this the lessons. This was the purpose of this episode, apart from sharing, apart from honoring my mom, apart from doing this as a note to my mom. But yes, we didn't go through all of that for nothing. Both my mom and I, my siblings, my family, my grandma. So I'm so happy that I've healed and still healing, and I found the courage to talk about this, to teach others about limiting beliefs, inner child healing, subconscious brain reprogramming, because in the past I never even spoke about any of this with some friends. I carried a lot of shame around it, around the story. I tried to hide it. So I know now that there's nothing to hide anymore. It's time to heal out loud. Thank you once again for being here, and happy birthday to my mama. Thank you. If today's episode made you think, laugh, cry, or want to yell at the universe, good. That means something moved. Make sure you hit follow, share this with a friend who's healing too, and remember, you don't have to heal quietly anymore. See you next week for more truth bombs, breakthroughs, and a little bit of magic.